You know what most fraud documentaries get wrong? They show you the crime, the money, the victims. They make it straightforward, almost comfortable. There's the villain. Here's the scheme. That's where it broke. But this case? This case doesn't work that way. Because in October 2017, something extraordinary happened. A single woman, disappeared from existence while simultaneously becoming one of the most wanted people on Earth. Not a fugitive running through deserts. Not a criminal hiding in a compound. She simply ceased to exist, while remaining everywhere. Her name was Ruja Ignatova, and for the next 7 years, she would haunt the financial world like a ghost that actually managed to steal $4 billion before vanishing. This is the story of how someone creates that kind of power, and what that power reveals about all of us. The deepest question this case asks isn't, how did she do it? It's this: how did she make intelligent people want to believe something they knew, on some level, was impossible? That's the real architecture of this crime. Not the technology. Not the money laundering networks. The architecture is psychological. It's the bridge between what we know and what we want to believe. Ruja Ignatova didn't invent a new technology. She invented a new relationship with hope. OneCoin wasn't just an investment. It was a community. Millions of people didn't buy currency, they bought membership in something. An early adopter tribe. A secret society that had figured out what the world hadn't yet seen. When you're part of that, when your friends are part of it, it's not a scam anymore. It's faith. Territory too. The collapse of expertise. Bitcoin happened. It was real. It created billionaires from nothing. So when Ruja positioned OneCoin as Bitcoin for the masses, the Bitcoin killer, the narrative didn't feel crazy. It felt obvious. She wasn't lying about opportunity, she was lying about what the opportunity was. But that distinction? It gets fuzzy when you're emotionally invested. It gets very fuzzy. MLM structures give people something traditional jobs never offer. Permission to get rich. Not through hard work, through being smart enough to see it first. The moment you recruit someone, you're not just selling a product, you're celebrating them. You're saying, you're special enough to play this game. That permission is intoxicating. Addictive. The moment when knowing you're involved in something harmful becomes easier to manage than admitting it. When the psychological cost of being wrong exceeds the moral cost of continuing. This is the territory where victims become perpetrators, where parents knowingly recruit their children's college funds. This case isn't unique because it's about cryptocurrency. It's unique because it asks, what are we willing to overlook if we've already invested emotionally? How much harm do we have to witness before believing it's actually happening? What makes us trust a single charismatic person more than the accumulated warnings of governments? When does hope become a weapon we use against ourselves? These aren't questions about fraud. They're questions about being human. September 2015. Bulgaria's Financial Supervision Commission issues a warning about OneCoin. A single bulletin. A regulatory cry into the void. No one listens. The investigator's perspective begins not with discovery, but with invisibility, watching the warnings accumulate while the machine keeps running. By March 2016, regulatory bodies across Europe are issuing warnings. Latvia, Norway, Sweden, Germany. But these aren't coordinated. They're parallel, isolated. An investigator realizes this isn't a simple crime. It's an international blind spot. The warnings exist, but in different languages, different jurisdictions, different bureaucratic channels. The criminal thrives in that friction. June 16, 2017. OneCoin claims Vietnamese government licensing. Vietnam's response comes 4 days later. It's forged. But here's what hits the investigator. They knew it was coming. They watched her forge it. The evidence arrives in real time. Yet she's still recruiting. Still selling. Still functioning. Why? Because her growth infrastructure is now self-sustaining. The investigators realize they're not chasing a crime in progress anymore. They're chasing a system that no longer needs its architect. October 25, 2017. Ignatova flies from Sofia to Athens. She lands. She passes through customs. Then nothing. Her phone doesn't ping again. Her associates don't hear from her. The indictment drops on October 12, 2017. She was already planning the vanishing act. The investigators realize she was always one step ahead. Her disappearance wasn't a panic response to the indictment. It was scheduled. It was part of the design. The investigators' recurring question, where is she? But the real question underneath, did she ever really exist in the way we thought she did? Jennifer wasn't a stupid person. She was a nurse in the UK.
She had a job.
She had stability.
She also had the specific pain that
stability never quite erases the knowledge that she would never be wealthy. Not through her salary. Not through any legitimate path available to people like her. When she encountered OneCoin in 2015, she encountered something more seductive than money. She encountered permission. Permission to be smart in a different way. Permission to see what others couldn't see. The recruitment moment. My friend Sarah invited me to a seminar. That's how these stories begin. Sarah wasn't a predator. Sarah was excited. Sarah was already in. And Sarah wasn't lying. OneCoin was real. You could buy packages. You could invest. Other people were doing it. The seminar was in a nice hotel. Professionals gave presentations with slides. It looked like opportunity. It felt like opportunity. The moment Jennifer handed over £200,000, not all at once, but gradually, in increments, telling herself each time this was the real commitment, she didn't feel like she was being scammed. She felt like she was being chosen. March 1, 2016. OneCoin's marketplace closes for maintenance. Jennifer tells herself it's routine. But then she checks the forum. Other people are confused. Why would a cryptocurrency need maintenance? How do you maintain a blockchain? The first crack in the narrative appears. She pushes it away. She tells herself this is how it works. She's just not technical enough. She believes in her own ignorance as a way of believing in OneCoin. By 2017, Jennifer has invested more than her annual salary. She's told her mother about OneCoin. Her mother is skeptical. This is the moment Jennifer needs OneCoin to work most, not because she believes in it, but because she can't afford to believe she was wrong. So she invests more. She recruits more. She tells herself the regulatory warnings are attacks from competitors threatened by Bitcoin's replacement. She's not stupid. She's just protecting herself the only way she knows how, by going deeper. The truth arrives not as a single revelation, but as accumulated gravity. News articles. Government warnings. The marketplace doesn't reopen. Her friend Sarah stops answering messages. Jennifer checks her account. The OneCoins she supposedly owns don't exist on any exchange. They can't be sold. They can't be transferred. They simply exist in a database that OneCoin controls, in a way that no outside person can verify. The final emotional moment isn't rage. It's clarity. And clarity is worse than rage. Because clarity means admitting to herself. She wasn't unlucky. She participated in taking other people's money. She recruited her mother's friend. The crime isn't something that happened to her. It's something she was complicit in creating. The victim's recurring question, what was I actually believing in? And underneath, who did I become when I believed it? We live in an economic system that has deliberately created scarcity where abundance should exist. Wages haven't kept pace with costs. Jobs no longer provide security. Pensions are disappearing. Into that carefully maintained anxiety, Ignatova didn't introduce a lie. She introduced an alternative. Not a lie about what's possible, but a proof that the established system's limitations aren't inevitable. When Bitcoin created billionaires, it proved something psychologically. The rules we thought were fixed could be broken. That proof made OneCoin seductive not despite being impossible, but because the impossibility of traditional wealth generation had been demonstrated. From September 2015 to October 2017, 2 years, regulatory bodies warned about OneCoin. The warnings accumulated. They stacked up across countries. And they changed almost nothing. OneCoin kept growing. Millions of people kept investing. This isn't about Ignatova's cleverness. It's about the fact that our institutions, the things we created to protect us from exactly this, were powerless. Or rather, they were powerful enough to issue warnings, but not powerful enough to actually stop the machine. That powerlessness is terrifying, because it reveals something. The system is more fragile than we want to believe. The most uncomfortable moment. We judge Jennifer McAdam and the 3 to 4 million victims. We say they should have known better. They should have researched. They should have listened to the warnings. And we're right. And we're also missing the point. The moment we judge them too harshly is the moment we stop examining the conditions that made them vulnerable. It's much easier to blame individual stupidity than to ask, what does it say about our society that millions of people were desperate enough to believe this? That should terrify us more than any individual criminal does. In June 2024, the FBI offered a $5 million reward for information leading to Ignatova's capture. Think about that number. $5 million. That's not about justice for the victims. They're not getting their money back through a capture. That reward is about something else. It's about the fact that we need her to exist. We need closure. We need to believe that if we just find her, arrest her, convict her, the story ends. But the story already ended. It ended the moment millions of people decided to believe something that wasn't true. Ignatova didn't create that willingness. She just recognized it and weaponized it. If this could happen with $4 billion, what else is happening that we're choosing not to see? What if everything you were told about opportunity is actually a mirror of your desperation? We don't begin with Ignatova's fraud. We begin with a single person, a nurse, a small business owner, an accountant, receiving an invitation to a seminar. This is 2015. Crypto is real. Bitcoin exists. Fortunes are being made. The backdrop is real. The fear of missing out is real. The document they receive looks professional. The people who invite them are people they know and trust. But then, beneath all that familiarity, runs a current of something else, the recognition that this feels too perfect. The returns are too good. The community is too welcoming. The ground beneath the promise is too smooth. Something doesn't require gravity to stay in place. But by the time that whisper of doubt arrives, the emotional foundation has already been poured. How much pressure does a system have to create before otherwise sensible people will step off the edge? By 2016, Ignatova isn't hiding. She's visible. Promotional events, photographs, press releases. She's not a criminal operating in darkness. She's a CEO operating in light. She gave a TED Talk unpublished, exists only in OneCoin contexts. She wore designer clothing. She flew in private jets. The success markers were all there. The money was real. Someone's money was real. The only question was whether it was the money she claimed it was. Regulatory warnings accumulate across countries. But here's the psychological trap. In modern life, we're drowning in warnings. We ignore most of them. A warning becomes background noise. And if warnings are background noise, then certainty becomes the premium commodity. Ignatova offered certainty. She offered narrative. She offered the thing that actually matters. Not truth, but coherence. A story that holds together. That makes sense. That explains why you should believe. At what point does the absence of visible evidence of a crime become evidence itself? March 2016. OneCoin's marketplace closes. But here's what happens next. Instead of people withdrawing, they double down.
Why?
Because the marketplace doesn't need to exist for people to believe in OneCoin. The belief exists independent of the infrastructure. That's when the real architecture becomes visible. This isn't a scam that depends on illusion. It's a scam that depends on participation. Every person who recruits someone else becomes a perpetrator. Every person who holds onto their investment becomes complicit in the system's perpetuation. The victims begin to become villains, not in an individual moral sense, but in a structural sense. The system has evolved beyond needing Ignatova. She's the figurehead, but the machinery is run by millions of people making small choices. The moment we understand this, the case transforms from a story about a criminal to a story about a system that criminalizes its participants. How complicit does a victim become in the moment they become a recruiter? October 25, 2017. Ignatova disappears. But here's what reframes everything. The indictment came 3 days before. The timing suggests she knew it was coming. The disappearance wasn't a panic flight. It was planned,
Calculated.
the final stage of the scheme, because her absence becomes the last piece of psychological control. Think about what her vanishing does. It crystallizes her. She becomes mythical. She becomes the story. 7 years later, the FBI is still offering $5 million for her capture. Not to recover the money, that's mathematically impossible. Not to provide closure to victims, that's already gone. But because her absence is more powerful than her presence ever was. She's everywhere and nowhere. She's a ghost worth hunting. We've been asking the wrong question the entire time. We've been asking, where is Ruja Ignatova? But the real question is, did she ever have to be anywhere? Her power wasn't in her presence. It was in the story we constructed around her absence. What if the greatest con isn't making people believe a lie? What if it's making them so invested in the narrative that they continue building it even after the architect has left? We didn't pursue her to catch a criminal. We pursued her to avoid looking at ourselves. Ruja Ignatova wasn't unique. The psychological vulnerabilities she exploited aren't unique. The conditions she operated in aren't unique. What was unique was the $4 billion, 3 to 4 million victims, a global network. But the mechanism? The mechanism is everywhere. MLM structures are legal. Similar psychological tactics are used in mainstream marketing. The gap between possibility and probability is being sold to us every day by legitimate institutions. Ignatova's crime wasn't that she was evil. It was that she was lucid. She saw the space between what we're told about opportunity and what we actually experience. She saw the vulnerability in that space. And she built a bridge across it. The $5 million FBI reward sits there, still active, still waiting. Not because anyone genuinely believes Ignatova can be found through a tip line, but because the mythology requires it. It requires that we still believe in pursuit, still believe in capture, still believe that if we just get this one person, the story
Ends.
It doesn't. The story doesn't end with Ignatova's capture, because Ignatova was never the story. The story is about what it means to live in an economic system desperate enough that millions of people will choose beautiful lies over difficult truths. What would change if we stopped looking for Ruja Ignatova and started looking at the conditions that made her inevitable? Subscribe for more and share your crypto scam story in the comments sections.